Ride me home, cowboy." That's what she said when I found her bleeding in the desert, 7 months pregnant, running from a husband who was supposed to be dead. I was 52 years old. Hadn't saved anyone in 15 years. Hadn't wanted to. But something about the way she looked at me like I was her last chance at surviving made me break every rule I'd lived by. I should have walked away. Instead, I made her a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. This is the story of how a broken-down bounty hunter and a desperate woman built a family from blood bullets and impossible choices. And it all started with the sound of wheels scraping against stone. The first sign that Jackson Thornwell's life was about to change came with the sound of wheels scraping against stone. Not the steady creak of a working wagon, but the desperate grinding of something broken, something dying. The Wyoming sun hung white and merciless overhead, turning the grassland into a sea of bleached gold that stretched to the horizon in every direction. Jack had been riding for 3 days without seeing another soul, which was exactly how he preferred it. 15 years alone had taught him that solitude was safer than company, that silence was more honest than words. But now that silence was breaking. He pulled his bay mare to a halt and listened. The wind carried everything in this country, every whisper, every warning. There it was again, metal on rock, the labored breathing of a dying horse, and underneath it all something that made his jaw tighten. A woman's voice, not screaming, not calling for help, just talking steady and low like someone trying to convince themselves of something impossible. Jack was 52 years old. His hair had gone silver at the temples 10 years back, full gray 5 years after that. His face was weathered leather, creased deep around the eyes and mouth. A scar ran from his left cheekbone down to his collarbone, a gift from a Confederate saber at Shiloh when he was barely 19. He'd killed his first man that day. Killed 39 more in the years since, every one of them with a price on their head, every one of them documented and legal. He was a bounty hunter now, had been since Mary and Emma died. Before that, he'd been a husband, a father, a man who believed the world could be good if you just fought hard enough to make it so. He didn't believe that anymore. But something about that voice, about the stubborn rhythm of words spoken to no one, made him turn his mare toward the sound, instead of away from it. That was his first mistake, or maybe his first piece of grace. He'd spend the rest of his life trying to figure out which. The wagon came into view as he crested a low rise. It lay on its side like a dying animal, one wheel still spinning slowly in the wind. The horse that had pulled it was 20 yards away, dead in the trace's neck, broken clean. Fresh blood darkened the dirt around the wagon bed, and for a moment Jack thought he was looking at a body. Then the body moved. A woman, young, maybe late 20s, though it was hard to tell with her face so battered. She was crawling. Not toward anything in particular, just away from the wagon, pulling herself forward with her hands while her legs dragged uselessly behind her. Her dress was torn at the shoulder and soaked with blood from a gash across her forehead. Her dark hair hung in tangled ropes around her face, and her belly, swollen with child, scraped the ground with every agonizing pull forward. She was talking to herself. That's what he'd heard. Talking like she was having a conversation with someone who wasn't there. "Just a little further," she was saying. "That's all. Just a little further and then you can rest. Just a little bit more." Jack dismounted slowly, making noise so he wouldn't startle her. The mare's hooves crunched on the dry grass. The woman's head snapped up, and for the first time Jack saw her eyes. Blue. The kind of blue you saw in deep water or high sky. The kind of blue that could make a man forget to breathe. But it wasn't the color that stopped him. It was the look in them. She wasn't surprised to see him. She wasn't relieved. She was calculating, weighing him like a threat, like something dangerous that needed to be measured before it got too close. "Ma'am," he said, keeping his voice low and level. "You're hurt." She didn't answer right away, just stared at him with those water-blue eyes, her chest heaving with the effort of breathing. Blood ran down her face from the cut on her forehead, dripping onto the collar of her torn dress. Her hands, he noticed, were blistered raw. She'd been holding those reins when the wagon went over. "I can see that," she said finally. Her voice was rough, dried out from thirst and pain, but there was steel underneath it. "You going to help me or just state the obvious?" Despite everything, despite the blood and the broken wagon and the way she could barely hold her head up, Jack almost smiled. Almost. "Depends," he said. "You going to tell me what happened? Does it matter?" "Might." She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes never leaving his face. She was reading him the way he'd just read her, looking for the truth underneath the surface. Finally she spoke. "I flipped it. Deliberately." "Yes." "Why?" Another pause. Longer this time. The wind picked up, carrying dust across the broken ground between them. The dead horse's blood was already drying black in the sun. "Needed it to look like an accident," she said. Jack felt something cold settle in his gut. He'd heard those words before, or ones like them. Heard them from women running, women hiding, women who'd learned the hard way that sometimes the only escape is the one you make yourself, no matter how much it costs. "Who are you running from?" he asked. Her chin came up, defiant, desperate. "My dead husband." Jack went still. Behind him his mare shifted her weight and blew air through her nostrils. A crow called from somewhere out in the grassland. The sun beat down on both of them without mercy. "Dead men don't chase," he said carefully. "This one does." They looked at each other across 10 feet of broken ground. She was still on her belly, still bleeding, still pregnant enough that Jack could see the child moving under her dress. Moving. Alive. And she'd deliberately flipped a wagon, killed a horse, nearly killed herself because staying wherever she'd been was worse than this. He knew that kind of desperation. He'd seen it in Mary's eyes after the men had come, after they'd done what they did, after they'd left her alive just long enough for Jack to ride home and find her still breathing, still trying to tell him about Emma, about what they'd done to their daughter before they killed her. He'd been tracking a deserter, 3-day job, easy money. He'd come home to blood and broken things and a wife who died in his arms, whispering that she was sorry, sorry she hadn't been stronger, sorry she hadn't saved their little girl. He'd buried them both in the garden Emma had loved. Then he'd gone hunting, found all 5 men within 2 weeks, turned their bodies in for the bounty, and never went home again. That was 15 years ago. 15 years of riding alone, sleeping alone, eating alone. 15 years of nothing but leather and gunpowder and the kind of silence that comes after you've heard the worst sounds a human being can make. And now, here was this woman bleeding in the dirt looking at him like he was a test she was waiting to pass or fail. "How far along are you?" he asked. 7 months. Baby moving. Kicking me in the ribs right now. You hit your head when the wagon went over. I know. You're bleeding. I know that too. You can't walk. Are you going to keep telling me things I already know, or are you going to help me? This time Jack did smile. Just barely. Just the corner of his mouth lifting before he caught it and pushed it back down. "Where's home?" She laughed. It was a terrible sound. Dry and cracked and full of something that might have been despair, or might have been relief, or might have been both. "Anywhere that's not here." Jack looked at her for another long moment. Then he looked at the wagon, the dead horse, the tracks leading back east across the grassland. He looked at the sun, gauging how much daylight was left. 4 hours, maybe 5. Enough to get somewhere safer than this. Enough to make a decision he knew he'd either regret forever or remember as the moment everything changed. "My name's Jackson Thornwell," he said. "Most people call me Jack." "Sarah," she said. "Sarah Winslow." "Well, Mrs. Winslow, I'm going to have to touch you now. No other way to get you on the horse." She flinched. Just a little. Just enough that Jack saw it and understood. He kept his distance, kept his hands where she could see them. "I'll warn you before I move," he said. "And I'll be as gentle as I can. But it's going to hurt. You understand?" She nodded. Her jaw was set, her hands clenched in the dirt, preparing herself. "I need you to tell me if anything feels wrong," Jack continued. "If the baby stops moving. If you feel like you're bleeding where you shouldn't be. Anything. You understand? I understand. All right then. He moved slowly, deliberately. Knelt beside her first so she could see him coming. Gave her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Just watched him with those blue eyes, wary but willing. I'm going to check your legs first, he said. Make sure nothing's broken. His hands were careful, professional. He'd done this before back in the war, back when being careful with wounded men was the difference between them walking again or never walking at all. Her left leg was bruised but intact. Her right ankle was swollen, possibly sprained, but nothing broken, nothing that wouldn't heal. Legs are all right, he told her. Ankles twisted but not bad. You'll be able to walk in a few days. Good. Now I'm going to lift you. It's going to hurt your head wound. Might make you dizzy. If you need me to stop you, say so. I won't need you to stop. Ma'am, you're 7 months pregnant and bleeding from the head. You might need me to stop. She smiled then, actually smiled, blood on her teeth and all. You always this stubborn with women you just met. Only the ones trying to kill themselves in the desert. Fair enough. Jack slid one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, counted to 3 out loud so she'd know when it was coming, then lifted. She weighed almost nothing, or maybe he was just stronger than he felt. She made a sound low in her throat when he straightened up. Pain. But she didn't ask him to stop. The horse was 15 feet away. Might as well have been a mile. Jack's back complained with every step, the old wound from Shiloh pulling tight across his ribs. He wasn't 20 anymore, wasn't 40 anymore, was 52 and feeling every year of it. But he'd carried wounded men further than this, had carried Mary from the house to the garden, had carried Emma's small body wrapped in her favorite blanket. He could carry this woman 15 feet. The mare stood patient as stone while he lifted Sarah into the saddle, got her settled with her legs on one side, her swollen belly pressed against the horn. She swayed, caught herself, gripped the pommel with white-knuckled hands. I'm going to ride behind you, Jack said. Keep you from falling. My arms are going to be around you holding the reins. That all right? Do I have a choice? Always. She looked down at him. Really looked like she was seeing him for the first time. Seeing the gray hair and the scar and the way his hands stayed steady even when the rest of him was tired. It's all right, she said quietly. You can touch me. Jack swung up behind her in one smooth motion, years of practice making it easy. His arms came around her, careful not to press against her belly, reaching for the reins. She went rigid at first. He felt it, the way her whole body locked up, the way her breathing went shallow, waiting for something bad, expecting it. Easy, he murmured, the same voice he used with spooked horses. Easy now, I've got you. Slowly, so slowly, he almost didn't notice it happening, she relaxed. Not all the way, but enough that she wasn't going to shake herself apart. Her head tilted back just a fraction until it was almost resting against his chest. The smell of her hair under the blood and dust was something like sage and something like rain. Jack clicked his tongue, and the mare started walking. South and west toward the mountains, toward the line cabin he'd been using as a base for the last 3 months, toward something that might be safe at least for tonight. They rode in silence. The sun crawled across the sky, turning from white to gold to amber. Jack kept the mare to a walk, not wanting to jar Sarah more than necessary. She didn't speak, didn't ask where they were going or how long it would take. Just sat there in front of him, bleeding slowly, one hand on her belly, like she was having a conversation with the child inside that only the two of them could hear. An hour passed, then 2. The grassland gave way to sage hills, then to broken rock and scrub pine. The air cooled as they climbed. Jack could feel Sarah shivering, so he shifted his weight and pulled his coat free, draping it over her shoulders without a word. She clutched it around herself, still silent. 3 hours in, she finally spoke. Why are you helping me? Jack didn't answer right away. He'd been asking himself the same question, had been asking it since he'd lifted her onto the horse, since he'd made the decision to turn toward her instead of away. Because I didn't help someone else once, he said finally, when I should have. Who? My wife. Sarah turned her head just a little. enough that he could see her profile against the darkening sky. What happened to her? Same thing that's happening to you, I expect, running from something, except she ran out of time. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was 15 years ago. Doesn't mean it stops hurting. Jack tightened his grip on the reins. She was right. It didn't stop. 15 years, and he still woke up some nights, reaching for Mary. Still heard Emma's laugh in the wind sometimes. Still felt the weight of coming home too late. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. They rode on. The sun dropped below the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of copper and blood. Shadows stretched long across the hills. The mare's hooves crunched on loose stone, and Sarah Winslow, bleeding and pregnant and running from a dead man, leaned back against Jack's chest and closed her eyes. "If I die on this ride," she said so quiet he almost didn't hear it, "promise me you'll save the baby." Every muscle in Jack's body went tight. His hands clenched on the reins. The mare felt it and tossed her head uncertain. "You're not going to die," he said. His voice came out harder than he meant it to. "I won't let you. You can't promise that. I just did. You don't even know me. Don't need to." "Then why?" Jack looked down at the woman in his arms, at the blood in her hair and the determined set of her jaw, and the way her hand never stopped moving over her belly, protecting, promising, preparing. He thought about Mary, about Emma, about all the ways he'd failed them, about all the ways he'd spent 15 years trying to outrun that failure and never quite managing it. "Because this time I'm here," he said. "This time I don't run." Sarah was quiet for a long time. So long that Jack thought maybe she'd passed out. But then she spoke again, and her voice was different, softer, like something in her had cracked open just enough to let a little light through. "Ride me home, cowboy." Jack's breath caught. Not at the words themselves, but at the way she said them. Not a command, not a plea, just a statement of fact, like she'd already decided he was safe, already decided he was someone worth trusting. "Where's home?" he asked. "I don't know yet," she said. "Guess we'll find out." The line cabin appeared as full dark settled over the mountains. It was small, barely more than 4 walls, and a roof tucked into a fold of rock where the wind couldn't reach it. Jack had chosen it specifically because it was hidden, because you'd have to know it was there to find it, because in his line of work, invisible was the same as safe. He dismounted first, moving slow so Sarah wouldn't fall. His legs were stiff from 3 hours in the saddle, his back screaming from the old wound. He ignored it, had gotten good at ignoring pain over the years, got even better at pretending he wasn't 52 and feeling every mile they'd ridden. Sarah tried to dismount on her own, made it halfway before her legs buckled and Jack had to catch her. She gasped, whether from pain or frustration or simple exhaustion he couldn't tell. Probably all three. "Easy," he said again, that same quiet voice. "Let me help." This time she didn't argue, just leaned into him and let him take her weight as he half carried, half walked her to the cabin door. It opened, with a familiar creak. The inside was dark and smelled like wood smoke and old leather. Jack got Sarah to the bed, lowered her onto it as carefully as he could. She made a sound that might have been relief or might have been pain. "Don't move," he said. "I'll get a fire going." It took him 5 minutes to get the kindling lit, another 10 to build it up enough to throw real light and heat. The cabin came into focus slowly. 1 room, a bed in the corner, a table with 2 chairs, a stove, shelves with basic supplies, and there, tucked against the far wall where the shadows were deepest, a cradle, small and wooden and empty, hand-carved, the last thing Jack had made before Mary died. He saw Sarah notice it, saw her eyes linger on it, saw the question forming on her face. "You said you had a wife," she said quietly. "Did you have a child too?" Jack's hand stilled on the fire poker. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't move, just stood there with the firelight painting shadows across his face and 15 years of grief sitting on his chest like a stone. "A daughter," he finally managed. "Emma, she was 8. She died. Same time as my wife." Sarah's face went soft, not with pity, with understanding. How? Men came while I was gone, did things no man should do, left them both alive long enough that Mary could tell me about it before she died. Oh God! I tracked them down, all 5. Took me 2 weeks. Did you kill them? Yes. Sarah nodded. Like that made sense. Like that was the only answer that could have made sense. Good. Jack looked at her then. Really looked. This woman he'd known for less than 4 hours. This stranger bleeding on his bed, carrying another man's child, running from horrors he could only imagine. And she'd said good. Not, I'm sorry. Not how terrible. Just good. Like she understood that some things couldn't be forgiven. Some things couldn't be made right. Some things could only be ended. The cradle. Sarah said, her eyes going back to it. You made it for her. Made it before she was born. Thought I'd pass it down when she had children of her own. It's beautiful. It's empty. Not for long. Jack froze. Sarah was looking at her belly, her hand moving in slow circles over the swell of it. The firelight caught in her dark hair, turned the blood on her face into copper. She looked young, too young, and tired. So tired. Your baby, Jack said carefully. The father. Is he the one you're running from? Sarah's hand stopped moving. Her jaw tightened. My husband is dead. You said that before. Dead men don't chase. Randall Winslow does. How's a dead man chase anyone? She looked up at him, met his eyes, and what Jack saw there made his blood run cold. Not fear, not any more. Something worse. Something that looked like acceptance. Because he's not really dead, she said. He faked his death, staged a bank robbery, stole $50,000 and disappeared. Everyone thinks he died in the robbery, but I know different. I heard him planning it with his men. Jack sat down hard in one of the chairs. His mind was already moving, already calculating. Does he know you heard? I don't think so. I ran the same day, while he was setting it up. How long ago? 6 weeks. And you've been running ever since. Yes. Where were you headed when the wagon flipped? West. I thought maybe California. Maybe I could disappear there. Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Mrs. Winslow, if your husband faked his death to steal that much money, he's not going to let you live. You're the only one who knows the truth. I know. And you're carrying his child. I know that too. Which means he'll either want the child or want to make sure no one can ever prove it's his. I know, she said again. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the tremor underneath it, the fear she was trying so hard to hide. That's why I flipped the wagon. If anyone found it, they'd think I died, that the baby died with me. But you didn't die. No. And now I know you're alive. Sarah's eyes widened. Just a fraction. Just enough that Jack saw the moment she realized what she'd done. She'd trusted him, told him everything, put her life in his hands. And now he could turn her in, could collect whatever reward Randall Winslow might be offering, could be the end of her instead of her salvation. Jack saw the calculation happen, saw her measure him one more time, saw her decide whether to trust the choice she'd already made. Are you going to turn me in? She asked. No. Why not? There's probably a reward. Don't care about rewards. Everyone cares about money. Not everyone. Then what do you care about? Jack stood up, walked to the shelves and pulled down a clean cloth, a bowl, a jug of water, brought them back to the bed and sat down beside her, started cleaning the blood from her face with movements so gentle they surprised even him. I care about making sure dead men stay dead, he said, and I care about making sure women who flip wagons to save their babies don't die in the desert. Sarah's breath hitched, not from pain, from something else. You really mean that? Yes, ma'am. Stop calling me ma'am. My name is Sarah. All right, Sarah. And I'm not asking you to fight my battles for me. Good, because I'm not asking permission. They looked at each other. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind was picking up promising cold. Sarah's hand went back to her belly, that constant protective motion. Jack finished cleaning her face, moved to check the wound on her forehead. It was deep, but clean. Would need stitches, but could wait until morning. "You should sleep," he said. "You've lost blood. You need rest." "Where will you sleep?" "Floor's fine. I can't take your bed. You're 7 months pregnant and just survived a wagon accident. You'll take the bed and you won't argue." Sarah smiled. Actually smiled, the first real one he'd seen. "You always this bossy." "Only when people are being stupid." "I'm not stupid." "No," Jack agreed. "You're brave. Stupid people don't flip wagons. Brave people do." The smile faded. "I'm not brave. I'm just out of options." "Same thing sometimes." He stood up, went to pull a blanket from the shelf for himself. Behind him, he heard Sarah shifting on the bed, getting as comfortable as a 7-month pregnant woman with a head wound could get. The fire was burning well now, throwing heat into the small space. It would be a cold night, but they'd be warm enough. Jack settled himself on the floor by the door. Not just because it was the gentleman thing to do, but because if anyone came through that door, they'd have to go through him first. Old habits from the war, from 15 years of bounty hunting, from 15 years of making sure he was always between the danger and whatever he was protecting. He closed his eyes, tried to sleep, failed. Because all he could think about was the woman on his bed, the child in her belly, and the dead man who was very much alive and probably already hunting for her. "Jack." Sarah's voice came soft through the darkness. "Yeah. Thank you for not leaving me." Jack didn't answer right away. What could he say? That he'd left everyone else who mattered, that he'd been leaving people behind for 15 years, and it hadn't saved a single one of them, that maybe just this once he wanted to be there when it mattered, instead of arriving too late to do anything but bury the bodies. "Get some sleep, Sarah," he said instead. "Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." "All right." Silence settled over the cabin. The fire burned low. Outside, an owl called from somewhere up in the rocks. Jack listened to Sarah's breathing slow and deepen as she finally let herself sleep. And lying there on the hard floor with his back aching and his conscience heavier than it had been in years, Jackson Thornwell made himself a promise. This time would be different. This time he wouldn't leave. This time he'd be fast enough, strong enough, brave enough to stand between the darkness and the light. This time, when death came calling, it would have to go through him first. And if that meant taking on a dead man who wasn't quite dead, and all the hell that came with it, then so be it. He'd walked through worse, had survived worse, had become worse, some would say. But maybe, just maybe, protecting Sarah Winslow and her unborn child would be the thing that finally let him become something better. Something like the man he used to be, before Shiloh, before Mary and Emma, before 15 years of silence and solitude and blood. Maybe this was his second chance, his last chance, his only chance. And Jackson Thornwell, 52 years old and tired down to his bones, decided right then and there that he wasn't going to waste it. Morning came cold and gray, the kind of dawn that promised winter, even though it was barely September. Jack woke before first light, the way he always did, his body trained by years of war and survival to never fully surrender to sleep. His back complained when he sat up the floor, having done him no favors. He was getting too old for this. Had been getting too old for this for a decade now. But age was just another kind of pain, and pain was something you learned to live with, or you didn't live at all. Sarah was still asleep. He could hear her breathing slow and steady from the bed. The fire had burned down to embers during the night. Jack built it back up, moving quietly, adding kindling until small flames licked at the larger wood. The cabin gradually filled with light and warmth. He put coffee on to boil, strong and black the way soldiers drank it, the way men drank it when they needed to stay sharp, stay ready. While the water heated, he checked his supplies. Dried meat, flour, some canned beans, a few potatoes that were starting to sprout, enough for a week if they were careful, maybe 2 if they had to be. The coffee smell must have woken her because he heard Sarah shift on the bed, heard the small sound she made as she moved and remembered where she was. Jack didn't turn around. Gave her a moment to orient herself, to remember the night before, to decide how she wanted to face this new day. "Morning," she said finally. Her voice was rough, still thick with sleep. "Morning," Jack replied. He poured 2 cups of coffee, turned to offer her one. She'd sat up, was leaning against the wall with both hands on her belly. The dried blood was still crusted in her hair and on her forehead, but her color was better than it had been last night. The wound had stopped bleeding at least. She took the coffee with both hands, breathed in the steam. "Thank you." "How's your head?" "Hurts." "Baby moving, like it's trying to kick its way out." "That's good. Means it's strong." Sarah sipped the coffee, made a face. "This is terrible." "It's coffee." "Barely." "You want terrible coffee or no coffee?" "Terrible coffee," she admitted. "Definitely terrible coffee." Jack almost smiled. Found himself doing that more around her than he had in 15 years. He covered it by drinking his own coffee, which was indeed terrible, but it was hot, and it had caffeine, and that was all that mattered. "I need to clean that wound properly," he said. "Stitch it if it needs it. You up for that?" Sarah's hand went to her forehead, touched the dried blood there. "Do I have a choice?" "Always have a choice, but infection's going to hurt worse than stitches." "Then I guess you'd better stitch it." Jack set his coffee down, went to his saddlebags, pulled out a small leather kit he'd carried since the war, needle and thread, a bottle of whiskey, clean cloths, the tools of frontier medicine, crude but effective if you knew what you were doing. And Jack knew, had sewn up more men than he could count, had sewn up Mary after, had tried to anyway. Some wounds were too deep for needle and thread. He brought the kit to the bed, sat down beside Sarah. She watched him with those blue eyes, wary but willing. The morning light coming through the single window turned her face to gold and shadow. "This is going to hurt," he said. "Whiskey will help, but not much." "I can't drink whiskey. The baby." "Just for cleaning the wound then, but it's going to sting. I've had worse." Jack believed her. Had to believe her if she'd been married to Randall Winslow, if she'd run the way she ran, if she'd flipped a wagon to fake her own death. You didn't do those things unless you'd already survived worse. He wet a clean cloth with whiskey, touched it gently to the wound on her forehead. Sarah sucked in a breath through her teeth but didn't pull away. Jack worked carefully, cleaning away the dried blood, revealing the gash underneath. It was about 2 inches long, following the curve of her brow, deep enough to need stitches, clean enough that he thought she'd heal without scarring too badly. "Going to need 4 stitches," he said. "Maybe 5. "All right." "You want something to bite down on?" "No, I want to watch." Jack threaded the needle. His hands were steady muscle memory taking over. How many times had he done this in field hospitals with men screaming around him, in the backs of wagons racing away from battle, in his own cabin with Mary dying and Emma already gone and nothing in the world making sense anymore. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." The needle went in. Sarah's whole body went rigid, but she didn't make a sound. Just stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, breathing through her nose. Jack worked quickly. 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5 for good measure. When he finished, he tied off the thread and sat back. "Done," he said. Sarah let out a long breath. "That wasn't so bad." "You're lying." "Maybe a little." He cleaned the wound one more time, gentler now. "You'll have a scar." "Good." "Good? Scars prove you survived something. I want the proof." Jack put the needle and thread away. Understood exactly what she meant. His own scars were proof too. Proof he'd lived when others died. Proof he'd fought when others ran. Proof he'd survived Shiloh and Gettysburg and 15 years of hunting men who didn't want to be found. "You should rest today," he said. "Give yourself time to heal." "I've been resting for 6 weeks, running and resting. I'm tired of both." Sarah. "What? You nearly died yesterday. You're 7 months pregnant. Rest isn't optional." She set her coffee cup down hard enough that it clicked against the wooden table. "You know what I'm tired of, men telling me what I can and can't do. What's optional and what's not. I had 4 years of that with Randall. I'm not doing it again." Jack held up both hands. "Not telling you what to do. Suggesting. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. Suggesting means you get to tell me to go to hell if you want." Some of the fire went out of her eyes. "I don't want to tell you to go to hell." "Then what do you want?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Her hand moved over her belly again, that constant gesture. Protecting. Promising. "I want to feel useful. I want to do something besides sit here and wait for my body to heal while my husband, who's supposed to be dead, is out there looking for me." "He doesn't know you're alive." "You don't know that." The wagon looked convincing. Dead horse. Blood. "If anyone finds it, they'll think you died. And if they don't find it, if they just think I disappeared, then he'll assume you ran, but he won't know where. He'll look. Let him look. These mountains are big. He'd need an army to search them all." Sarah shook her head. "You don't know Randall. He doesn't give up. Ever. It's why he was successful, why people trusted him. He's patient, methodical. He'll keep looking until he finds me." "Then we'll be ready when he does." She looked at him. Really looked. "You don't have to do this. I'm not your responsibility." "Didn't say you were." "Then why?" Jack stood up, walked to the window. The sun was higher now, burning off the morning mist. He could see for miles from here. Grassland and sage and distant mountains. Empty country, safe country, or as safe as anywhere got. "I told you last night," he said. "I didn't help someone when I should have. When it mattered. I'm not making that mistake again. Your wife, Mary, and my daughter Emma." "How old was she, Emma?" 8. Sarah made a soft sound. Pain and understanding mixed together. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." "Doesn't mean it stops hurting." The same words she'd said last night. Jack turned from the window, looked at this woman he'd known for less than 12 hours. This stranger who somehow understood what 15 years of silence hadn't erased. "No," he said quietly. "It doesn't stop." They were quiet together. The fire crackled. Outside, a hawk screamed as it circled overhead hunting. Life and death happening simultaneously the way it always did out here. The way it had happened at Shiloh. The way it had happened in his cabin 15 years ago. "The cradle," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "Did you use it for Emma?" "Yes. First 6 months of her life she slept in that cradle. Mary would rock her while she sang. Old hymns mostly. Amazing Grace. Abide with Me. Emma would fall asleep with her thumb in her mouth and her other hand wrapped around Mary's finger." "She sounds beautiful." She was. Looked like her mother. Dark hair, dark eyes. But she had my stubbornness. Mary used to say Emma got it honest whatever trouble she caused." "What kind of trouble?" Jack found himself smiling at the memory. "Oh, all kinds. Climbing trees she wasn't supposed to climb. Sneaking cookies before dinner. Bringing home every stray animal she found. Once she brought home a baby fox. Thing had been abandoned by its mother. Emma fed it with a bottle, kept it in a box by her bed. Cried for a week when it was strong enough that we had to let it go. She had a good heart. The best heart. She thought everything could be saved. Every lost thing could be found. Every broken thing could be fixed." His voice went rough. "She was wrong." Sarah shifted on the bed, wincing as she moved. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "When I was little, maybe 6 or 7, my mother told me that people don't really die as long as someone remembers them. That memory is a kind of life, a kind of forever." "You believe that?" "I don't know. But I think Emma would have liked knowing someone was talking about her, remembering her, keeping her alive that way." Jack's throat went tight. He'd spent 15 years trying not to think about Emma, trying not to remember, because remembering hurt, because memory was just another wound that wouldn't heal. But maybe Sarah was right. Maybe keeping Emma locked away in silence wasn't honoring her. Maybe it was just another way of letting her die. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For remembering her, even though you never met her." I'd like to remember her, Sarah said. If you'll tell me about her. If that's all right. It's all right. They looked at each other across the small cabin. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Two people who'd both lost things they couldn't get back. Two people who'd both survived when they weren't sure they wanted to. Two people who were maybe possibly finding a reason to keep surviving. Jack cleared his throat. You said you wanted to be useful. You feel up to helping with breakfast. What do you have? Not much. Flour. Eggs if the chickens are still laying. Bacon if the bear hasn't gotten into the smokehouse. You have chickens. 3 of them. Mean as hell, but they lay decent. Sarah smiled. Actually smiled the first one that reached her eyes. I can work with that. They made breakfast together. Sarah moved slowly, carefully, one hand always on her belly. But she was steady, competent. Made biscuits while Jack fried bacon and collected eggs from the hen house out back. The chickens were indeed mean, but they'd laid 4 eggs overnight. Fresh. Good. They ate at the small table, the morning sun streaming through the window. The food was simple but filling. Sarah ate like someone who hadn't had a decent meal in weeks. Probably hadn't. 6 weeks of running meant 6 weeks of whatever you could catch or steal or beg. This is good, she said around a mouthful of biscuit. Don't get used to it. Supplies won't last forever. How long? Week, maybe 2. And then? Then I go into town for more. Sarah's fork stilled. You can't. If Randall has men looking for me, they might be watching. Might see you buying supplies for 2 people. I'll be careful. Careful isn't enough. Not with Randall. Jack set his own fork down. Tell me about him, your husband. I need to know what we're dealing with. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, detached, like she was talking about someone else's life instead of her own. Randall Winslow is 35 years old, handsome, charming when he wants to be. He owned the largest bank in Denver, came from money, old money, the kind that opens doors and buys silence. How'd you meet him? At a church social. I was 21, he was 30, seemed sophisticated, worldly. My parents were dead by then, had died in a cholera outbreak the year before. I was living with my aunt working as a seamstress. Randall courted me properly. Flowers, dinners, poetry. I thought I was lucky. When did you realize you weren't our wedding night? Her voice went even flatter. He told me then, told me that I belonged to him now, that everything I was, everything I did, everything I thought it was all his. He owned me the way he owned his bank, his house, his horses. Jack's hands clenched on the table. Did he hurt you? Not physically, not at first. He didn't need to. He had other ways. He controlled everything. What I wore, what I ate, who I talked to, where I went. He isolated me from everyone, made sure I had no friends, no family, no one but him. And no one noticed. People saw what Randall wanted them to see, the perfect husband, the generous benefactor, the pillar of the community. When I tried to tell someone my aunt, she said I was being ungrateful, that I didn't know how good I had it. What about the bank robbery? When did that happen? 2 months ago. Randall had been planning it for at least a year. I heard him talking to the men he'd hired. They were going to rob his own bank, make it look like real criminals. Kill 2 guards to make it convincing. Randall would be the grieving victim, the brave banker who tried to stop them and died in the attempt. But he didn't die. No. He staged his death, had one of his men dress in his clothes, shot him in the face so no one could identify the body. Everyone believed it was him. They had a funeral. I had to stand there and pretend to grieve while knowing he was out there somewhere with $50,000. Why didn't you go to the law? Sarah laughed, bitter and sharp. Because half the law in Denver is on Randall's payroll. The other half wouldn't believe me. A hysterical widow accusing a dead man, they'd lock me up, call me mad, and Randall would win anyway. So you ran. I ran, took what little money I could find, bought a wagon and a horse, headed west, thought maybe if I could get far enough away he'd never find me. And the baby, Jack asked carefully. How far along were you when he faked his death? 5 months? He knew. Made sure everyone knew. Made sure there were witnesses to the devoted husband caring for his pregnant wife. Her hand moved to her belly. He wants this child, not because he loves it, because it's his property, his legacy. He'll come for me because I'm carrying his blood. Jack sat back. The picture was becoming clear. Randall Winslow wasn't just a criminal. He was a man who needed control, who saw people as possessions, who would never ever let go of something he considered his. Men like that didn't give up, didn't forgive, didn't forget. Then we need to make sure he never finds you, Jack said. How you said yourself these mountains are big, but they're not infinite. Eventually he'll search them all. Not if he thinks you're dead. The wagon. Exactly. If he finds the wagon, sees the blood, the dead horse, he'll believe you died. Case closed. And if he doesn't believe it, then we deal with that when it comes. Sarah shook her head. You don't understand. Randall is patient, methodical. If there's even a chance I'm alive, he'll keep looking. He'll hire men, offer rewards, turn over every stone until he finds me. Let him try. I've been hiding in these mountains for 3 years. No one finds me unless I want to be found. You're one man. I'm pregnant. That's harder to hide. Maybe, but you're here now, under my protection, and no one gets to you without going through me. They looked at each other across the table. Sarah's eyes were searching his face, looking for something. Truth, maybe, or certainty, or just the simple reassurance that she wasn't alone anymore. Why are you doing this? She asked again. And don't tell me it's because of your wife. There's more to it than that. Jack was quiet for a long moment. The question deserved an honest answer. But honest answers required opening doors he'd kept locked for 15 years. Required admitting things he'd barely admitted to himself. After Mary and Emma died, he said finally, I went hunting, found the men who killed them, brought them in for the bounty everyone, $50 a head, $250 total. The law said it was justice, but it didn't feel like justice. It felt empty. So you kept hunting, kept collecting bounties, kept moving. Figured if I stopped moving, stopped working, I'd have to think about what I'd lost, about the fact that I came home 3 days too late, that if I'd been faster, smarter, better, maybe they'd still be alive. That's not your fault, isn't it? I was tracking a deserter. Easy job. But I took my time, was thorough, made sure I had the right man before I brought him in. If I'd been less careful, less concerned with doing it right, I could have been home sooner. Or you could have been killed, or you could have brought in the wrong man and lived with that instead. Maybe. Not maybe. Definitely. You can't carry that guilt, Jack. It'll destroy you. Too late. Already destroyed. This is just what's left. Sarah reached across the table, put her hand over his. Her fingers were warm, small, alive. Then let me ask you something. If you're already destroyed, if there's nothing left worth saving, why are you here? Why did you stop for me yesterday? Why are you sitting in this cabin making promises you don't have to make? Jack looked at her hand on his. Couldn't remember the last time someone had touched him like that. With kindness, with intention, with the simple human need for connection. Because maybe you're wrong, he said quietly. Maybe there is something left. Maybe helping you is my chance to find out. And if I can't be helped, if Randall finds me anyway, then at least I'll have tried. At least I'll have been here when it mattered. That's more than I can say for last time. Sarah squeezed his hand once, then let go, pulled back. But something had changed. Some invisible line had been crossed. They weren't strangers anymore, weren't just a bounty hunter and a runaway wife. They were two people who'd survived things they shouldn't have. Two people who were maybe possibly finding a way to survive something new together. All right, Sarah said. Then we do this together. You teach me how to survive out here, and I'll teach you how to think like Randall, how he plans, how he hunts. Between the two of us, maybe we stand a chance. Deal. They shook hands across the table. formal and serious and a little bit absurd given the circumstances. But it felt right. Felt like a promise neither of them was sure they could keep, but were going to try anyway. The rest of the day passed quietly. Sarah rested, though she complained about it. Jack worked around the cabin, fixing things that needed fixing, checking supplies, making sure everything was secure. They were careful with each other, polite. Two people learning how to share space, learning how to trust. That evening, as the sun dropped toward the western peaks, Jack taught Sarah how to load and fire his Winchester rifle. She'd never shot a gun before, was afraid of them. But fear was something you pushed through when survival required it. "Hold it tight against your shoulder," Jack instructed, standing behind her. "Recoil's going to kick. If you don't hold it firm, it'll bruise." "All right." Sarah's voice was uncertain. "Look down the sight. See that can—" "Yes." "Breathe in. Hold it. Squeeze the trigger while you're holding your breath. Don't pull. Squeeze." Sarah did as he said. The rifle cracked. The can didn't move. "Again," Jack said. "You're pulling right. Steady your arms." They practiced for an hour. By the end, Sarah had hit the can 3 times out of 10. Not great, but better than nothing, better than being helpless. "Good," Jack said as they walked back to the cabin. "Tomorrow we'll practice more. Do you think I'll need it?" "The gun." "Hope not. But hoping isn't the same as being ready." That night, after a simple dinner of beans and bacon, they sat by the fire. Sarah had taken to sitting in one of the chairs instead of lying down, claiming she was tired of being horizontal. Jack suspected she just wanted to feel normal, to pretend for a few hours that she was a guest instead of a refugee. "Tell me more about Emma," Sarah said into the comfortable silence. "What did she like to do?" Jack stared into the fire, remembered. "She liked to pick wildflowers. Every spring, soon as the first ones bloomed, she'd be out there collecting them. Bring them home in bunches. Mary would put them in jars around the house." "What kind?" "All kinds. But her favorites were the yellow ones. Daisies, I think they were called. Wild daisies. She said they looked like little suns." "That's sweet." She was sweet. Too sweet for this world, maybe. Mary used to worry about that. Worried Emma was too trusting, too kind, that someone would take advantage. And then someone did. Yes. They were quiet. The fire popped. Outside, the night wind was rising, carrying with it the promise of cold. Winter was coming, always coming. That was the thing about living in the mountains. Summer was brief. Winter was eternal. "I'm going to plant daisies," Sarah said suddenly. "When the baby comes, when this is all over, I'm going to plant yellow daisies for Emma." Jack's throat went tight. "You don't have to do that." "I want to. She deserves to be remembered. And I want my baby to know that once there was a little girl who liked flowers, who was kind, who was loved." "Thank you," Jack managed. "You keep thanking me, but I'm the one who should be thanking you." "For what?" "For treating me like a person, like someone worth protecting. Randall never did that. To him, I was a possession, a thing. You're the first man in 4 years who's asked me what I want instead of telling me what I need." Jack didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to respond to the simple gratitude in her voice, so he said nothing, just nodded, kept staring at the fire. "Jack," Sarah's voice was quieter now. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think people get second chances, real ones?" "I don't know. Never much believed in them before. But now I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe second chances are out there. You just have to be willing to take them when they come." "Is that what I am? Your second chance?" Jack looked at her then, really looked. At the stitches on her forehead and the determined set of her jaw and the way her hand never stopped moving over her belly. At this woman who'd driven a wagon off a cliff rather than go back to her husband, who'd survived and was still surviving, who was asking him, a broken-down bounty hunter with more ghosts than future, if he believed in redemption. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I'm yours. Maybe we're both. Maybe." They sat together as the fire burned down, as the night deepened, as something fragile and undefined grew between them. Not love, not yet, but the beginning of something. The first tentative steps toward trust, toward partnership, toward the possibility that two broken people might with time and care begin to heal. Sarah eventually went to bed. Jack took his place on the floor by the door, listened to her breathing slow, listened to the wind outside, listened to the silence that was somehow less lonely than it had been the night before. And Jackson Thornwell, 52 years old and carrying 15 years of grief, felt something he hadn't felt in longer than he could remember. He felt hope, small and fragile and probably foolish, but hope nonetheless. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tomorrow they'd have to plan. Tomorrow the threat of Randall Winslow would be more real, more immediate. But tonight, for just tonight, they were safe, warm, together, and for now, that was enough. 3 days passed in the mountain cabin. 3 days of cautious peace, of learning each other's rhythms, of building something that felt dangerously close to normal. Sarah grew stronger. The wound on her forehead began to heal, the stitches holding clean. She practiced with the rifle every morning, her aim improving with each session. Jack watched her transform from uncertain to determined, saw the way she set her jaw before each shot, the way she refused to quit until she'd hit the target at least once. They talked. More than Jack had talked to anyone in 15 years. Sarah told him about growing up in Missouri, about parents who'd loved her fiercely before cholera took them both in the same week, about the loneliness that had made Randall Winslow's attention seem like salvation instead of the trap it was. Jack found himself telling her things he'd never spoken aloud. About Shiloh, about the boy he'd bayoneted who couldn't have been more than 16. About the way Mary used to hum while she cooked. About Emma's laugh, high and clear as church bells. On the 4th morning, everything changed. Jack was outside splitting wood when he heard it. The sound was faint, barely audible over the wind, but unmistakable once you knew what to listen for. Horses, multiple horses, coming up the trail from the east. He dropped the axe and moved, fast but quiet the way the war had taught him. Got to the cabin door in 3 strides. Sarah was inside kneading dough for bread flour, dusting her hands and forearms. She looked up when he entered, saw his face, and went pale. "What is it?" she asked. "Riders. Coming this way." "How many?" "Can't tell yet. At least 3. Sarah's hand went to her belly. That automatic gesture. Protecting. "Randall." "Don't know, but we're not taking chances." Jack moved to the gun rack, pulled down the Winchester, checked the load, grabbed his pistol, strapped it on. "You remember how to use this?" He held out the smaller rifle, the one Sarah had been practicing with. She took it with steady hands. The flour left white prints on the wooden stock. "Yes," she said. Her voice was calm, but Jack could hear the fear underneath. "What do we do?" "You stay inside. Lock the door after me. Don't open it for anyone but me. If shooting starts, you get in that back corner behind the bed. Understand?" "Jack, I can help. I can shoot now." "You're 7 months pregnant. You're not shooting anyone." "But, Sarah." He put his hands on her shoulders, looked her straight in the eyes. "I need to know you're safe. Need to know the baby's safe. I can't focus out there if I'm worrying about you. Please." She searched his face, looking for what he didn't know. Reassurance, maybe. Certainty. The promise that everything would be all right. Jack couldn't give her that. All he could give her was his word that he'd try. "All right," she said finally. "But if you get yourself killed, I'm going to be very angry with you." Despite everything, Jack felt his mouth twitch. "Noted." He turned to go. Sarah's hand caught his arm, stopped him. When he looked back, she was closer than he'd expected. Close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her blue eyes. Close enough to smell the bread dough on her hands. "Be careful," she said. "Always am." "I mean it, Jack. Don't be a hero. If there's too many of them, you run. You hear me? You run, and you don't look back." "Can't run. This is where I make my stand, even if it kills you, especially then." They looked at each other. Jack wondered if she understood what he was really saying, that he'd spent 15 years running from grief and guilt and the memory of arriving too late, that he was done running, that this cabin, this woman, this moment, this was where he drew the line, here and no further. "Don't die," Sarah said, simple, direct. "Please don't die." Jack nodded once. Then he was out the door, moving low and fast toward the cover of the trees. Behind him, he heard the lock slide home. Good. At least she'd listened to that much. The riders came into view as Jack positioned himself behind a fallen pine log. 3 men, just as he'd estimated. They rode in a loose triangle, eyes scanning the terrain. Professional. Careful. Not random travelers. These were hunters. The lead rider was in his 40s, lean and weathered, with a dark beard shot through with gray. He wore a duster that had seen better days and a gun belt that looked well used. The other 2 were younger, maybe mid-30s, both of them carrying rifles across their saddles. Bounty hunters. Jack had worked with enough of them to recognize the type. They pulled up 50 yards from the cabin. The leader raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. Then he called out, his voice carrying clear in the mountain air. "Hello, the cabin. We're looking for someone. Wondering if you've seen her." Jack didn't answer. Waited. Watched. The leader tried again. "Woman, late 20s, dark hair, pregnant. Might be injured. Her wagon was found overturned about 10 miles east of here. We're hoping she made it to shelter." Still Jack said nothing. His finger rested on the trigger guard. Not quite ready to fire. Not yet. But ready to be ready. "Look, friend," the leader continued, his tone reasonable. "We're not here to cause trouble. The lady's husband is worried sick about her. He just wants his wife and baby home safe. That's all." Jack felt his jaw tighten. So Randall had sent men, had found the wagon. But instead of believing Sarah was dead, he'd assumed she'd survived, was looking for her. That meant Randall knew something, or suspected something, or was just too controlling to accept that she might have escaped him even in death. "Not interested," Jack called back. "Move along." The leader's posture changed, became more alert. "So you are there. Good. Listen, I don't want any trouble, but I've got a job to do. Mr. Winslow is paying good money to find his wife, $2,000 dead or alive, though he'd prefer her alive on account of the baby. $2,000. That was serious money. The kind of money that would bring every bounty hunter and drifter within 100 miles. The kind of money that meant Randall wasn't going to give up. "She's not here," Jack said. "Now get off my land. We'd like to check, just to be sure." "I said she's not here." "And I said I'd like to check." The leader's hand moved to his rifle. Casual, but Jack saw the intention in it. "Now you can make this easy or you can make it hard. But one way or another, we're going to look inside that cabin." Jack stood up. Slowly. The Winchester came to his shoulder in one smooth motion. 40 years of muscle memory. War and hunting and staying alive. The rifle was aimed at the leader's chest. Center mass. "The shot you took when you meant it." "You know who I am?" Jack asked. The leader squinted. Then his eyes widened slightly. "Thornwell. Jack Thornwell." "That's right. And you know my reputation. Everyone knows your reputation. Then you know I don't miss. And you know I don't bluff. So when I tell you to get off my land, you'd be smart to listen." The 3 men looked at each other. Jack could see them calculating, could see them weighing $2,000 against the very real possibility of dying in the next 30 seconds. Finally, the leader spoke again. "Mr. Winslow's going to hear about this. About you protecting her. Don't care what he hears. He'll send more men. Let him send them. Outcome'll be the same." "You're making a mistake, Thornwell. She's not worth dying for." Jack's finger moved from the trigger guard to the trigger itself. "That's where you're wrong. Now ride." The leader held his gaze for another few seconds. Then he nodded to his men. They turned their horses and started back down the trail. But before they disappeared from view, the leader called back one more time. "Randall Winslow doesn't forget, and he doesn't forgive. You just made an enemy who won't stop until you're dead, and she's back where she belongs." Then they were gone, the sound of hooves fading into the distance. Jack stayed where he was, rifle still raised until he couldn't hear them anymore. Only then did he lower the weapon and turn back toward the cabin. Sarah was at the window, rifle in her hands, her face pressed against the glass. When she saw Jack, she opened the door. He'd never seen anyone look so relieved and so terrified at the same time. "They're gone?" she asked. "For now. But they'll be back." "Yes." "With more men?" "Probably." Sarah set the rifle down with shaking hands. "I should go. I should leave. If I'm not here when they come back, you'll be safe." "No." "Jack." I said no. He came into the cabin, closed the door behind him. "You're not going anywhere. Not alone. Not pregnant. Not with Randall's men out there looking." "But they know I'm here now. They know you're protecting me. That makes you a target." "I've been a target before. Still here. This is different. This is Randall. He won't stop. He'll send more men. Better men. He'll keep coming until one of them gets lucky." "Then we need to be smarter than them." Sarah shook her head. "You don't understand. Randall has money. Connections. He can hire an army if he wants to. How do we fight that?" Jack was quiet for a moment. She was right. They couldn't fight an army. Couldn't defend this cabin against 10 or 20 or 50 men all coming at once. But there was another way. A better way. The way Jack had stayed alive for 3 years in these mountains. "We don't fight," he said. "We disappear." "What?" "These mountains have caves. Hidden valleys. Places no one knows about unless you've lived here as long as I have. We pack what we can carry and we go. Tonight. Before they come back." "I can't. Jack, I'm 7 months pregnant. I can't go hiking through mountains." "You can ride. We'll take it slow. But we have to move. Staying here is suicide." Sarah looked around the cabin. At the bed where she'd slept. At the table where they'd shared meals. At the cradle in the corner, empty but somehow full of promise. Jack could see her wanting to argue, wanting to find another way. But there wasn't another way. There was only survival. "All right," she said finally. "We go. But Jack, if I slow you down, if the baby comes early, if anything goes wrong, you leave me. You save yourself. Promise me." "Not going to promise that." "Jack, I don't leave people behind. Not anymore. We do this together, or not at all." They looked at each other. Sarah's hand went to her belly again. Jack wondered what she was thinking. Wondered if she was scared. If she regretted trusting him. If she wished she'd died in that wagon instead of ending up here in a cabin in the mountains with a broken-down bounty hunter who'd just declared war on a dead man with unlimited resources. "Together, then," Sarah said. They spent the next 2 hours packing. Jack moved with practiced efficiency, choosing only what they'd need to survive. Blankets, food, ammunition, medicine. His saddlebags filled up quickly. Sarah packed her own small bag. Not much. A change of clothes, the few personal items she had left. She moved slowly, carefully, one hand always on her belly. "How far is this place we're going?" she asked. 10 miles, maybe 12. "And you're sure no one knows about it?" "I'm sure. Found it by accident 3 years ago. Been using it as a backup ever since." "What if they track us?" "They won't. I know how to hide our trail." Sarah nodded, trusting him, trusting his experience, trusting that he wouldn't lead her into something worse than what she was running from. They left at dusk. The sun was dropping behind the western peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Jack led the mare with Sarah mounted, her hands gripping the pommel. His own pack was heavy on his back, but manageable. He'd carried heavier, had carried wounded men across battlefields, had carried his daughter's body to her grave. He could carry a pack 12 miles. They moved slowly, carefully. Jack chose the rocky ground where hooves wouldn't leave tracks, waded through streams to break their scent trail, doubled back twice to make sure no one was following. The night grew cold as they climbed higher. Sarah didn't complain, but Jack could see her shivering, could see the exhaustion in the set of her shoulders. "You all right?" he asked. Fine. Don't lie to me. I'm tired, and cold, and scared, but I'm fine. We can rest if you need to. I need to keep moving. The sooner we get there, the sooner we're safe. So they kept moving. The moon rose full and bright, turning the landscape to silver and shadow. Jack navigated by memory and instinct, following trails that weren't really trails, places where deer walked, where water ran in spring, where a man could move without being seen if he knew where to step. 4 hours in, Sarah made a sound, low and pained. Jack stopped immediately. What is it? He asked. Nothing. Just a cramp. Where? My back? And my belly? It's fine. Happens sometimes. Jack didn't like the sound of that. But they were only 2 miles from the cave now. 2 more miles, and they'd be safe. 2 more miles, and Sarah could rest properly. Can you make it? He asked. I can make it. They pushed on. The trail grew steeper, rockier. The mare picked her way carefully over loose stone. Sarah gripped the saddle with both hands, her face pale in the moonlight. Jack watched her closely, too closely, which is why he didn't see the riders until they were almost on top of them. The sound of guns cocking was unmistakable. Jack's hand went to his pistol but stopped when a voice called out from the darkness. I wouldn't. Clayton Mercer, the bounty hunter from earlier, stepped into view. His rifle was aimed at Jack's chest. Not unless you want the lady to get hurt in the crossfire. Behind him, 3 more men materialized from the shadows. Not the same men from before. These were harder, meaner, the kind of men who didn't ask questions before they pulled triggers. How'd you find us? Jack asked, his mind already racing through options. None of them good. Followed you from the cabin. You're good, Thornwell. Real good. But I've been tracking men for 20 years. I know all the tricks. Sarah's breathing had gone shallow. Jack could hear it from where he stood, could hear the fear in it, the pain. Let her go, Jack said. This is between you and me. Can't do that. She's worth $2,000. You, on the other hand, you're just in the way. One of the other men spoke up. Clayton, why are we talking just shoot him and take the woman? Because, Clayton said, his eyes never leaving Jack. Jack Thornwell's got a reputation. Man's killed 40 bounty hunters and outlaws. I don't want to be number 41 if I can help it. Then what do you want? Jack asked. I want you to step away from the horse, nice and slow. Then I want you to take that gun belt off and throw it on the ground. You do that, and maybe you get to walk away from this. And if I don't, then we kill you and take her anyway. Your choice. Jack looked at Sarah. She was staring at him with wide eyes, terrified. Not for herself, for him. He could see it in her face, could see her silently begging him to walk away, to save himself, to let them take her if it meant he'd live. But Jack had walked away once before, had left his family unprotected, had come home to blood and broken things. He'd lived with that choice for 15 years. He wasn't making it again. No deal, he said. Clayton sighed. That's disappointing. Really is. I was hoping we could do this civilized. Nothing civilized about hunting pregnant women. It's just business, Thornwell. Nothing personal. Everything's personal. Jack's hand moved. Fast, faster than a man his age should be able to move. The pistol cleared leather as he dove to the side. Got off 2 shots before he hit the ground. Heard one of them connect. Heard a man scream and fall. Then the world exploded into noise and fire. Rifles cracked. Bullets tore through the air where Jack had been standing. He rolled behind a boulder, came up shooting. Another man went down, but there were still 3 left. Too many, too well positioned. The mare screamed and bolted. Sarah was still on her back, clinging desperately to the saddle as the horse charged up the trail, away from the gunfire, away from Jack. Clayton and his men ran after her. Jack came out from behind the boulder, firing as he moved, dropped 1 more man, but Clayton was fast. He turned, fired twice. Jack felt something punch him in the shoulder, hot and sharp. Then again in the side. He stumbled, fell, tasted copper and dust. Above him, Clayton stood silhouetted against the moonlight. His rifle was pointed at Jack's head. Sorry, Thornwell, he said. I really am. You were a legend. But legends die, too. His finger tightened on the trigger. Jack waited for the shot, waited for the darkness, waited to see Mary and Emma again after 15 years. The shot came, but Jack didn't die. Clayton did. He fell backward, a hole in his chest, surprise frozen on his face. Behind him, Sarah sat on the still, panicking horse. The Winchester was at her shoulder, smoke curled from the barrel. Her face was white, her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady. "I told you I could shoot," she said. Then she was off the horse and running to Jack, dropped to her knees beside him. Her hands were on his shoulder, his side checking the wounds. "Oh, God," she breathed. "Oh, God, Jack, you're bleeding so much." "I'm all right," he managed. His voice sounded wrong, weak. "You're shot twice. You're not all right." "Seen worse." "That doesn't make this better." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she tried to stop the bleeding with her hands. "You can't die. You promised me you wouldn't die." "Didn't promise that." "Well, you should have. You should have promised, and now you're shot and I don't know what to do." Jack reached up with his good arm, touched her face. "Get to the cave, 2 miles north. Follow the stream. You'll see it. I'm not leaving you. Have to. Not safe here. I don't care about safe. I care about you." "Sarah." "No." Her voice was fierce, determined. "You don't get to save me and then die. That's not how this works. We do this together, remember? Together or not at all." Jack wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was being foolish, that he was 52 and shot twice and not worth dying for. But the words wouldn't come. The world was starting to fade around the edges, gray creeping in, cold settling in his bones. "The baby," he managed. "Promise me you'll save the baby." "I promise I'll save both of you. Now shut up and let me work." She tore strips from her dress, packed them against his wounds. The pressure hurt. God, it hurt. But it slowed the bleeding, gave him a chance. Maybe not a good chance, but a chance. "Can you ride?" she asked. "Don't know." "You're going to have to. I can't carry you." "Go without me." "Not happening. Now get up." She shouldn't have been able to help him stand. She was 7 months pregnant and half his size, but somehow she did. Got him upright, got him moving, got him to the horse and pushed him up into the saddle. Then she climbed up behind him, her arms coming around his waist, holding him steady. "Where?" she asked. "North," Jack mumbled. "Follow stream." Sarah kicked the horse into motion. They moved through the darkness. Jack slumped forward in the saddle, Sarah holding him upright from behind. He could feel her belly pressed against his back, could feel the baby moving, still alive, still fighting, just like its mother. Time became strange, disjointed. Jack would fade in and out. Sometimes he was in the mountains with Sarah. Sometimes he was at Shiloh with bullets flying. Sometimes he was in his cabin with Mary bleeding and Emma already gone. "Stay with me," Sarah kept saying. "Jack, stay with me. We're almost there." Were they? Jack couldn't tell. Everything looked the same. Everything was shadows and moonlight and the steady rhythm of hooves on stone. Then Sarah was pulling the horse to a stop, was helping him down, was half dragging, half carrying him into darkness. A cave. They'd made it to the cave. She laid him down on stone, cold, hard, but out of the wind, out of the weather, out of sight. "I need to check your wounds," she said. "I need light." Jack heard her moving, heard the strike of a match, saw a firelight bloom. Sarah had found his pack, was pulling out supplies. Her hands were bloody, her dress was torn, her face was streaked with tears and dirt, but she was alive. The baby was alive. That's what mattered. "Jack," her voice was urgent. "Jack, look at me." He tried. God, he tried. But the gray was getting darker, the cold was getting colder, his eyes wouldn't focus. "Don't you dare," Sarah said. Her hand was on his face, firm, demanding. "Don't you dare leave me here alone. I need you. We need you." Jack wanted to answer, wanted to tell her he'd try, that he'd fight, that he wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. Not when there was still something worth holding on to. But the darkness was pulling him down, down and down, and down, into silence, into nothing, into the place where Mary and Emma waited. The last thing he heard was Sarah's voice, breaking, desperate, refusing to give up. "Ride me home, Cowboy, just like you promised. Ride me home." Then nothing but darkness and the sound of his own heart beating slower and slower and slower. Jack's consciousness flickered. Darkness, pain, the smell of blood and stone, then Sarah's voice distant and desperate. "Jack, Jack, please, I need you." He tried to open his eyes, couldn't, tried to move. His body wouldn't obey. The darkness pulled at him, promised rest, promised an end to 52 years of fighting. "The baby's coming." Sarah's voice broke. "Jack, the baby's coming and I don't know what to do." That got through, pierced the fog, the darkness. Jack's eyes opened. Just slits. Just enough to see Sarah doubled over, one hand on her belly, the other pressed against the cave wall. Her face was twisted in pain. Her dress was soaked with blood and water. "How long?" His voice was a rasp. "An hour, maybe more. I lost track." She looked at him with wild eyes. "I tried to wake you. I tried to stop it. But it's coming, Jack. It's coming now." Jack tried to sit up, made it halfway before agony exploded in his shoulder and side. He gasped, fell back, saw stars, but he was awake, conscious, and Sarah needed him. "Come here," he said. "Lie down, next to me." "Jack, you're bleeding." "I've been bleeding for hours. I can bleed a while longer. Come here." She did, awkward and painful, lowering herself to the stone floor beside him. Her breathing was rapid, shallow. Between contractions or during one, Jack couldn't tell. "I need you to listen to me," Jack said. "I've done this before. Delivered babies in the war, my own daughter. You're going to be all right, but you need to do exactly what I say. Understand?" Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. For the next 3 hours, Jack guided her through it. Through the pain, through the fear, through the moments when she wanted to give up, to let the darkness take her too. He couldn't move, could barely keep his eyes open, but he could talk, could tell her when to push, when to breathe, when to rest. "I can't," Sarah sobbed at one point. "Jack, I can't. It hurts too much." "Yes, you can. You flipped a wagon. You shot a man. You carried me 2 miles. You can do this." "What if something's wrong? What if the baby—" "Nothing's wrong. Your body knows what to do. Trust it. Trust yourself." Another contraction. Sarah screamed. The sound echoed off the cave walls, primal and terrifying. Then silence. Then a different sound. A baby crying. Jack's vision swam. Sarah was holding something, small and red and covered in blood, moving, crying, alive. "It's a girl," Sarah whispered, wonder in her voice. "Jack, it's a girl." "Let me see her." Sarah shifted closer, held the baby where Jack could see. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair, eyes squeezed shut against the world she'd just been born into. "She's beautiful," Jack managed. "She's alive because of you." Sarah was crying again, but different tears now. Joy mixed with exhaustion. "We're both alive because of you." Jack reached out with his good arm, touched the baby's hand, tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb. That grip, that undeniable grip of new life. "What will you name her?" he asked. Sarah looked at him, really looked. "Emma. Her name is Emma." Jack's breath caught, his vision blurred with more than blood loss. "Sarah, your daughter should be remembered, should live on, if you'll let me." "I'd be honored." They lay there together, Jack bleeding and broken, Sarah exhausted and battered, and baby Emma crying her protest at being born in a cave in the middle of nowhere. But they were alive, all 3 of them, against impossible odds, against men with guns and money and power, against fate itself. They had survived. Jack didn't know how much time had passed when he heard the horse. Hours, maybe. A day. Time had become meaningless. just moments of consciousness between long stretches of nothing. But he knew that sound. One horse, one rider, coming up the trail toward the cave. "Sarah," he whispered, "someone's coming." She was nursing Emma, the baby wrapped in Jack's coat. Sarah's head jerked up, fear flooding her face. "Randall, maybe. Hide. Back of the cave. I'm not leaving you. Not asking you to leave. Asking you to hide. With Emma. If it's him, he'll come for me first. That gives you time." Sarah hesitated, then nodded, gathered Emma close, and moved deeper into the shadows. Jack heard her footsteps fade, heard the baby's cry cut off abruptly. Good. She was keeping Emma quiet. Jack reached for his pistol, found it, checked the chambers. 3 bullets left. Not many, but enough. A shadow fell across the cave entrance, backlit by afternoon sun. A man, tall, well-dressed, completely out of place in the wilderness. Randall Winslow. "Quite a trail you left Thornwell." Randall's voice was cultured, educated, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. Blood, a panicked horse, not hard to follow. He stepped into the cave, his eyes adjusted to the dimness, found Jack lying in a pool of his own blood, smiled. "You look terrible. I'd say you have maybe an hour left, 2 if you're lucky." "Long enough," Jack said. "For what?" "To protect my wife. She's not here, is she? Probably ran the moment she could. Left you to die alone. That's what happens when you trust people, Thornwell. They always leave." "She didn't leave." Randall's smile faded. "Then where?" "Right here." Sarah stepped out of the shadows. Emma was gone. Hidden somewhere deeper. Sarah held Jack's Winchester, aimed at her husband's chest. Randall turned. For the first time, Jack saw genuine surprise on the man's face, then calculation, then that smile again. "Sarah, my dear wife, you look well for a woman who just gave birth in a cave. Don't what call you my wife, but that's what you are, legally, morally. You belong to me. I belong to myself. That's not how the law sees it. You ran, you stole from me, you killed my men, and now you're going to come home and face the consequences. I'm not going anywhere with you." "Yes," Randall said calmly. "You are. Because if you don't, I'll make sure everyone knows the truth, that you killed Clayton Mercer and his men, that you conspired with a wanted criminal, that you're an unfit mother. They'll take the baby away, put her in an orphanage, and you'll hang." Sarah's hands tightened on the rifle. "You can't prove any of that." "I have friends, Sarah, powerful friends. I don't need to prove it, I just need to make people believe it." "She doesn't have to prove anything." Jack's voice cut through the cave, stronger now, fueled by anger, by the need to protect. "Because you're going to confess." Randall laughed. "Confess to what?" "To being concerned about my missing wife, to hiring men to find her, to staging your own death, to stealing $50,000, to murdering 2 bank guards. You have no proof. I have Sarah. She's a witness. The traumatized wife of a dead man who's going to believe her. The law will, when I bring you in." Randall looked at Jack. Really looked. Saw the blood, the wounds, the way Jack could barely keep his eyes open. You can barely breathe. You think you can arrest me?" "I've arrested men in worse condition." "Then try." Randall's hand moved toward his coat. Jack saw it, saw the weapon hidden there, raised his pistol. 2 shots cracked simultaneously. Randall stumbled back, looked down at his chest, at the spreading red stain, at Sarah who'd fired the Winchester at the same moment Jack fired his pistol. "You shot me," Randall said, almost surprised, almost offended. "Your own husband." "Ex-husband," Sarah said. "You died 2 months ago, remember?" Randall fell to his knees, then to his face, didn't move again. Sarah lowered the rifle, stood there, shaking. Jack could see her processing it, the finality of it. The man who'd controlled her life for 4 years was dead, Really dead this time. "Sarah," Jack said gently, "you all right?" She looked at him. "I killed him. We killed him. Together. I killed my husband. You protected yourself and Emma. That's not murder, that's survival. Will the law see it that way?" "Yes, because I'll make sure they do." Sarah set the rifle down, walked to Jack, knelt beside him. "You're still bleeding." "I know. We need to get you help." "In a minute. First check his pockets. He'll have papers. Proof of the robbery, of the murder. He was too careful not to keep records." Sarah did. Found a leather wallet. Inside documents. Proof. Everything they'd need. "Got it," she said. "Good. Now go get Emma. Make sure she's all right." Sarah disappeared into the shadows, came back with the baby. Emma was asleep, peaceful, completely unaware that the man who would have ruined her life was lying dead 30 feet away. "What now?" Sarah asked. "Now," Jack said, "we wait for morning, then we ride into town, together, as a family." Sarah smiled through her tears. "A family. If you'll have me, old bleeding, probably dying me." "You're not dying. I won't let you." "Then I guess I'll live." The garden behind the cabin bloomed with yellow daisies. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Emma Thornwell, 5 years old and fearless, ran through them with her arms spread wide, pretending to fly. "Careful," Sarah called from the porch. "You'll crush them." "They bounce back, Mama," Emma called. And she was right. The daisies always bounced back, resilient, stubborn, just like the woman who'd planted them. Jack watched from the rocking chair he'd built last winter. His shoulder ached in cold weather now. The wound in his side pulled when he lifted anything heavy. But he was alive. 60 years old, scarred, gray-haired, and alive. Sarah came out with 2 cups of coffee, sat in the chair beside his. She was 34 now, crow's feet at her eyes from smiling, from laughing, from living a life she'd chosen instead of one chosen for her. "She looks like you," Jack said. "She has your stubbornness. Fair trade." They sat in comfortable silence, watched Emma play, listened to her laugh. That sound still got to Jack, still made his throat tight, because he'd spent 15 years not hearing Emma's laugh, his first Emma, and now he got to hear it again. Different child, same joy. "The sheriff came by yesterday," Sarah said, "while you were in town." "What did he want?" "Just checking in, making sure we were all right. He said the reward money for Randall finally came through, $3,000. "That's good." "He also said there's talk about us, about how we're not properly married." Jack looked at her. "That bother you?" "Does it bother you? Never much cared what people thought." "Me neither. But Emma's starting to ask questions. About why her last name is different from mine. About why you're Uncle Jack instead of Daddy." "What do you want me to be?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma, watching the daisies, watching the life they'd built from blood and desperation and impossible choices. "I want you to be her father," she said finally. "I want us to be a real family, legal and proper, not because of what people think, but because it's true." Jack felt something warm spread through his chest, something that might have been hope, might have been happiness, might have been the thing he'd thought died 15 years ago with Mary and the first Emma. "Then we'll make it legal," he said. "Proper, real." "You sure I come with a lot of trouble?" "Had trouble before, still here." Sarah laughed, leaned over and kissed him, quick and sweet, like they had all the time in the world now, like they'd earned it. Emma came running up the porch steps. "Mama, Uncle Jack, I found a fox, a baby fox. Can we keep it?" Jack and Sarah looked at each other, both thinking the same thing, remembering the first Emma, the baby fox she'd rescued, the tears when they'd had to let it go. "Let's see it first," Jack said. They walked down together, Jack, Sarah, and Emma, through the garden of yellow daisies, toward the girl and the fox kit and whatever came next. Behind them the cabin stood solid. The cradle inside was empty now, Emma had outgrown it, but it was ready, waiting, because Sarah was pregnant again. 3 months along. They hadn't told Emma yet, wanted to wait until they were sure, but Jack knew, could see it in the way Sarah moved, in the glow she had, in the small secret smiles she gave him when she thought he wasn't looking. Life, growing, continuing. This was what he'd fought for. This was what Sarah had run for. This moment, this peace, this family built from ashes and blood and 2 broken people who'd found each other when they'd both stopped looking. "Ride me home, cowboy," Sarah had said that first day. And Jack had. Brought her home. Built her a home. Made a home with her. They were home. Finally. Forever. And it was enough.